Welcome to the City Movement Podcast. At the City Movement, we are passionate about planting churches and YMCAs and uplifting the Christian mission of the YMCA. In each episode, we will talk deeply about the mission of the YMCA and provide encouragement to pastors and members of churches and YMCAs. We're your hosts, Jeff Snyder and Mike Newman. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Let's jump into today's episode. Hey, welcome into Season 3 of the City Movement Podcast. Come on, baby.
Season 3.
This is Jeff Snyder. I'm here with my co-host, Mike Newman.
Greetings.
And we have the absolute pleasure today of being joined by the one, the only, Dale Norris. Hey, Dale, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad you're here, man. Speaking of here, where exactly are we?
Well, I love your studios, by the way. I was going to mention just the waterfronts of beautiful Lake George.
That's right.
A little brisk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it kind of just feels like it's open for a conversation.
Yeah, man. Well, I cleared this with our tech wizard, Catherine, before this. But Catherine, could you give them a shot of Silver Bay? So, you know, the more beautiful shot is at what we're looking at right now, not necessarily our background.
Out there.
And so this is the awesome location of our podcast today. This is where we host a conference once a year to talk about the Christian mission of the YMCA. And we're here right now in Silver Bay, New York, with leaders from all over the country. Dale, where are you from?
I'm from Seattle area.
Yeah, and we got people from Florida, from Mississippi. Obviously, we're from Ohio, all here in Silver Bay, New York, to talk about the mission, the Christian mission of the YMCA.
That's right. And yesterday I met someone from Burundi, East Africa. So it just got global.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur.
Yep, Arthur.
Okay, so here, one of the things we're going to do in Season 3 is we just think it would be so helpful for all of our listeners, all of our viewers, anyone in the YMCA, churches in the YMCA, to know this is a national and international movement. This isn't just something that a church or a couple churches in Lebanon, Ohio care about, but there are churches and YMCAs all over the United States, and as you just mentioned, Mike, all over the world that care about lifting the C in the YMCA. And so we're going to have different guests on, hopefully from churches all over America. We might even have some YMCA leaders from all across our nation.
That's right.
To talk about what it looks like to do ministry in the YMCA.
That's right. Jeff and I just had lunch with a guy who just got hired at a YMCA in Indiana, and his whole role is to gather kids, make the environment Christ-like, engage them with gospel conversations, and plug them into local churches.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's a pretty good role.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the story of Dwight L. Moody. Remember that? It's like he's in Chicago bringing all the kids in for a Bible lesson, and it's just a reminder that the foundation, the history of the YMCA is a youth movement.
That's right.
You know, so it's like, let's figure out how to engage and reach out to young people.
That's right.
But this is enough of Mike and Jeff talking.
That's right.
The real star of today's show is Dale
Norris.
Yeah, so Dale, why don't you give us there's probably millions of people watching this.
That's right.
And why don't you just give an intro? Who is Dale Norris? Tell us about your family. Tell us where you're coming from.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So I'm a pastor from Seattle area. I grew up in Washington, Northwest area my whole life. I'm married, have 3 kids. They're all out of the house now, and we're kind of in a new phase in ministry ourselves too. So there's a lot going on. A little bit of my background. I got connected with this movement. I was planting a church in a place called Sumner, Washington, just south of Seattle, and we're just kind of diving into the community.
Yeah.
And as we were kind of getting to know the area, it's kind of a little bit of my hometown, but we had just been moving back into that area. One of the things that was happening was they're building a new YMCA. And so me being a pastor, kind of thought, well, that's going to be the center of our community. I need to go to that Y and figure out what's happening and find a way that I can have some influence or meet some people or help support what they're doing. And to be honest, in the Northwest, I wasn't sure how receptive they would be about a pastor coming in and volunteering. I didn't know if they'd be worried about, whatever. And so I thought I'll go there and ask if they need someone to wipe down machines, pick up towels, whatever I can do to help support.
Start somewhere.
Yeah, and I met a few people there. I heard there was a Bible study going on, and I thought, well, I need to know what that's about. And so actually met a gal named Janelle Nelson. And Janelle was what I now know as a mission director of our association. And so I met with her, and we kind of bumped into each other at a luncheon one day, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I've been trying to reach out to you." And she's like, "Okay, great." We talked, and I said, "Listen, what I'd like to do is figure out a way I can just volunteer at the Y to meet people and hopefully, maybe share Christ with people." And I didn't know if I should share that, but that's just kind of what my motivation was. And she said, "Wow, there's a lot of opportunity at the Y. Let's talk about that." And she started to slowly share with me a little bit about what it would look like to partner with the YMCA. And at that point, I thought it looked like us coming in and bringing something to the Y.
Yep.
And really wasn't sure the dynamics and kind of the details of that. But she's like, "Why don't you come? We're having a meeting at this place called Silver Bay." And I was right here, just out on one of those docks praying one night after several days meeting different leaders and stuff. And it became clear that, man, I think God's calling us to move out of the building we're in. We'd been meeting there for about 6 months as a new church plant, and start approaching the executive at that branch about meeting in the Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we did that and told our church when we were coming back, "Hey, look, I think we're going to be moving locations," and kind of got a funny look from everybody. And "What are you talking about?" And went to the branch executive and said, "Look, would you consider allowing a church to meet in your branch on Sunday mornings?" And she kind of looked at me like, "Never thought of that. Never considered that. Let me think about it." So we're kind of in a holding pattern, but that kind of got the whole ball rolling with our from my background as a pastor in a church to becoming a little bit involved with the Y.
So Dale, question, share with our listeners in terms of strategy. I mean, what was your message to the church and your leadership team? I know you called the church the Well. What kind of strategy and ministry philosophy did you want to communicate in moving to the Y?
Yeah.
Because the opposite, would be like, "Hey, we found a place to rent for a great price."
Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
Tell us what you told and.
Yeah, it's
what
much
that was
different
like.
than that. And in the sense with the well, it really comes out of John chapter 4, the woman at the well. And it really is the heart of meeting people where they're at and sharing the gospel, challenging them with a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
But the key is meeting them where they're at. It was always in our DNA to go to others rather than to kind of be in a building and put up a sign and hope they come to us.
Yep.
And so it was part of our culture as a church already, but the radical step of kind of moving out of a building kind of took away that final straw of holding on to something and just say, "Look, we're not going to have anything out there. We're going to be where the people are, regardless of where that takes us."
Yeah.
And so this is where our community meets. This is where we're going to be.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a real strategic thinking in that way. I think what we didn't realize is the shift that it would have to take.
Yeah.
I understand the logistics and the details of building and sound systems or whatever, those kind of details.
Portable church.
I kind of expected those.
Yep.
The details and maybe the shift I didn't expect was the paradigm shift in our minds and our hearts as pastors and as churchgoers.
Yeah.
I think our church thought, well, we're just going to be in a different building.
Yeah.
And kind of assumed just like we were renting that building, we'll rent this building. And really what we had to do, and I had to continually kind of share and remind myself of, was that we're not just renting a building. We're trying to come into a place and partner. We're trying to come in to give. We're trying to come in and be like missionaries in this community. How can we come and love and serve and care for these people and not come and take away to build something that we're trying to do? So it was kind of a shift in my own thinking, a shift in my own heart of, hey, I'm not trying to build this thing because this is what I want. It's actually, what's God doing here? Let's discover what God's already doing in this place, and let's kind of try to fan that flame.
And I love what you said about because I agree with the importance of reminding our churches and even reminding ourselves of why we're doing this, the importance and the call of what we're doing. I was reading, I think it was Psalm 78 last week, and it was one of those passages where it's talking about teaching your children and remembering God's faithfulness as almost a way that spurs you on for future generations. And I think that's even so applicable to what you're talking about, because it's like to get in the habit of continually reminding yourself of for a YMCA church, for example, of why we're here, why we're doing this, and why we feel like God's calling us into us for this moment is so biblical.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we see that all over the place in the Bible with building reminders of God's faithfulness to remind our hearts, which are so prone to wonder, if you will. I love that. I love
Psalm 77?
I think it was 78. Was it?
78? It's great. I was in 77 last week.
Nice.
And was encouraged by the way it said, but your way was through the waters, though your footprints were unseen. Talking about when the people of God left Egypt. And Dale, maybe one story that could show like a way that God led you through the waters, though your footprints were unseen, right? Dale and I and Jeff, we've been talking a lot about how to plant churches and whys, and the type of church is not going to be this like glorious exterior experience with stained glass windows and organs, and not necessarily traditional church. Tell that one story when your expectations were adjusted and shifted, when people would come in and should we put pipes and drapes up? And do you know which one I'm talking about?
A little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you tell that story and how that kind of worked
What's
in your heart?
interesting is we had our branch executive. She's just a great gal, and she finally gave us permission to come in. And she said, look, you come in Sunday mornings and meet, and they're open Sunday mornings. So they open at 8, and they're open till, I think, 2 or something. And so that was a little bit of a curveball. I was expecting, well, we'll go Sunday nights when it's closed. And she says, I don't really want to staff it again for you guys. If you want, you can use it when it's open, though. Yeah. So we get kind of an arts and crafts room that's kind of a dance studio, too. So there's space and there's room, but you really have to reimagine what are you going to do with this space. And are we going to come in and, like, say, try to remake this whole area, or do we just say that's not what's important?
Yeah.
And so what we did was kind of just set up chairs. We set up a little sound system. We worked with them to give them projectors and things that they could use, and tried to keep it simple. What's interesting about it, though, is in this dance studio, it's all glass on one wall right across from kind of the kids area and stuff, and so everyone's dropping off their kids, and then they're kind of seeing us in there do church, and we're kind of doing church in a fishbowl, which I was a little nervous about.
Sure.
Yeah. Should we cover that up? Should we? And I think that's what you were talking about. And the idea of having it open actually invited so many more people in to see, well, what's this? What's going on in here? And what's this class? And we're like, well, we call it church, and everyone's welcome. Come on in. And
Church
and so the music, our worship would just kind of fill the place, and you could hear it all the way in the gyms. You could hear it in the weight rooms, and it turned out to be the biggest blessing that we had. That we're there when people are there, and we're meeting people who would otherwise probably never be at a church service, and they're allowed. We're getting to meet them and kind of show what it looks like for the church to gather.
Yeah. I actually I texted that story to a guy in North Carolina this morning. Because he met a church planter. They're starting the process of being connected to a Y, and the holdup is, but the Y's open in the morning. And I said, well,
we've done that before.
I actually think it's better.
It's a great thing because people are coming in. It's that 1 Corinthians 14 moment of that what we're doing as a church. The lost are looking in, and they're wondering.
Yes.
And
there's an
we
openness.
Want that.
There's a genuine openness. No, we didn't have anyone come in angry. We didn't have anyone. We did as I'm teaching one Sunday. We had a janitor come pushing a garbage can.
Sure.
I mean, between me and the front row, as I'm right.
You're just pouring your heart out.
Really
I mean, this is maybe one of the best sermons ever. And he walks right between me and the people. Grabs the garbage, throws it in, and walks out, and we just laughed.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what it does? It disarms all of us and allows us all just to kind of go, look, let's not take ourselves too seriously. Let's not get caught up in how we look or how good we are, and let's just focus on God and what He has for us.
That's right.
And oftentimes we've had people who'd walk in and say, look, I came to work out, my wife and I are on the outs, and I thought I'd just get a workout in. And I don't need a workout. I need someone to talk to.
Yes.
And, they would walk into our congregation. Maybe they'd just come grab a cup of coffee, whatever, and they'd want to talk to somebody.
Yep.
So we had so many conversations. We met so many people, and we've had an opportunity with so many others that we never would have met.
Yeah, that's like John 4 in action.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, John 4, the woman at the well, we've talked about this, right? Comes to the well to have a physical need met. But when she encounters Jesus, she has her emotional and spiritual needs met. And that is one of the reasons we would say that church planting in the Y is go to the community center where people are going to get their physical needs met. And when they encounter the love of Jesus and presence of the Father, it's going to be more than a physical need being met. So I just love even that story. Can I share one more story too?
Come on.
Okay. One of the things I'm learning right now, this applies to what you just said about the janitor with the garbage and just kind of forcing us not to take ourselves too seriously, right? Is that I was just at a conference where it was a child discipleship conference, and they were kind of laying out the old map. They called it the old map and the new map to making disciples, basically. Saying like the old map was good for when that was the information we had, but just like we wouldn't use a navigational map from the 1500s today,
Right.
we have new information, we should use a new map. And the one that is highlighted to me based on the story you're even telling is like the old map of what they're saying. These aren't my words. The old map of making disciples in American culture was attractional and entertainment focused and church growth. That was like one of the bullets. And they said the new map, instead of being attractional, is formational. And I just think when my wife and I were at this conference, and one of our takeaways was like, we think planning a church in a YMCA is very much in line with their new map strategy. And then this wasn't a YMCA church conference.
Right.
This is something else in Nashville. But I think that being in a YMCA forces, it almost like it exercises the muscle of, I cannot be about attraction and great production, because it just forces that out of me a little bit. Not that we don't want to do things well, because we do.
Yeah.
We want to preach well. We want our worship to be great, but we want our main focus to be the Father, to be formation. And I think that even your story right there is like, let's focus on formation, not get all derailed when a janitor comes in during a sermon.
Yeah, and we had one member of our church, amazing gal, and came up and goes, "Hey, listen, are we going to have a choir in this church?" As I don't think so. That's not kind of our thing, and that's not. But would you ever consider leading a community choir and maybe having that be a program of the Y? And maybe that's something that there's other people would want to sing. And so there's avenues for things that people enjoy that have traditionally been part of church services that you can do in different ways,
That's right.
and do it in a way that is attractional in that, but not the main thing about building your church around.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, Dale, give us like a snapshot of how the Lord's leading you and what He's doing in your life and your role on the board of the city movement, things like that.
Yeah. So things have changed dramatically. Obviously, when we went through COVID, like everybody, massive disruption to the whole world, and our Y shut down and was closed for 6 months. So we're kind of a church body without a home, and we're kind of scrambled. We did some Zoom services, and then things started to open up again, and the Ys were continuing to remain to be closed. And so we kind of found another building to use, and but churches haven't returned to the Ys, and we're in the Northwest where we're at.
Yeah.
So that changed a lot of what we were able to do, although the commitment remained. For me personally, I just stepped out of that role, as you guys know, and so resigned my position as a pastor there a few months ago, and really felt like God was calling me to a new chapter in our lives. I'd been in vocational ministry for 30 years, and not resigning from ministry, but stepping out of just vocational role. So with City Movement, I think it's been an incredible opportunity for me, and I'm excited about, because I think it's one of the most exciting opportunities in church planning is this idea of planting churches around the world in Ys. So I get jazzed up about that, and I get excited about that, and look forward to just working with guys like you and others to meet with pastors, to identify YMCAs that would like a church in it, identify Ys that have churches in them, and meet those pastors and kind of coordinate some of those kind of roles.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about how I see God working in this movement is there's no like proven strategy to this is the way it always works to get a church in a YMCA. You know, like you just recounted the story of your church moving into the YMCA, and it was you going to talk to the executive director and saying, "Would you consider us meeting here?" And her kind of being surprised.
Yeah,
I just had dinner with someone last night here at Silver Bay at the conference, a 26-year-old pastor from Indianapolis, who the Y approached him at the same time he was thinking about approaching the Y, because the Y is building this huge new facility in the middle of this. I don't know anything about it, but apparently there's this huge youth sports park on the north side of Indianapolis called Grant Park, and the Y is building a new building in the middle of that park. And they reached out to him because he had just planted a church somewhere else in January of this year, saying, "Would you consider moving into the Y?" And he's here now at Silver Bay because he's like, "Yeah, I think maybe,
Sure.
And so it's like, I just think God is moving all different sorts of ways in this movement that really get me excited about what he's doing.
It's great.
we've kind of used that illustration of like a magnet. Like we know that God's at work deeply all over the world, but especially in this movement, we've been able to identify that, and it's kind of like it's like running a magnet over the land and kind of seeing where is that work that God's doing, and let's try to join in with that. Let's try to support that. What can we do to fan that flame a little bit?
It's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, or I don't know why I just said Carl when I looked
That's
at
okay.
you.
I'll take it.
Can I call
take
you
it.
Carl?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Mike, I think we're running out of time. Any last comments you would want to say? Any last questions you would want to ask Dale?
No, I just appreciate you, Dale, your friendship, heart for the Lord, heart for seeing the gospel go forth, and glad that you're on the team.
Yeah,
it's
thanks,
pretty
man.
exciting.
I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say in closing is I've been coming to Silver Bay to this conference since 2015. Dale's probably been coming since 2015
time,
or
yeah.
2014.
Yeah.
And I feel like I didn't really know you until the last couple months.
Yeah.
I knew of Dale Norris,
The legend.
but didn't really know you. And it's been a joy to spend some time with you over these last
Thanks.
few months. I'm excited about growing friendship with you and partnership and what
Yeah,
we're doing.
absolutely.
So, and for anyone that is listening to this podcast, not watching it, if you want to get a glimpse of what we're doing, the shot of Silver Bay, obviously you can go watch this on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, The City Movement, or we're going to have like a recap and promo video of this week. We'd love for you to go watch it on our website, thecitymovement.com, if you want to check that out. So, hey, thank you for joining us today. We hope this was a blessing to you. We hope it encouraged your heart, motivated you for more ministry in the YMCA or in your local church or in your Y, if that's who you are. So, this is episode 3 for Mike Newman and Dale Norris. This is Jeff Snyder, and that was the City Movement Podcast.